Okay, good evening and welcome to the public meeting of the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, October the 16th, 2019. At this moment, I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is video voice recorded and live streamed from the hdsb.ca website. I'd also like to ask that you turn any devices to silent mode. So all trustees are present. Are at the meeting. Trustee Amos is just out of the room at the moment. She will be returning. And Superintendent Puccetti is unable to be with us this evening. This evening, Trustee Rocha will be honoring the land.
Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Seeing none. Next, we are up to the agenda. Is there any discussion on the agenda at all? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Trustee Gray, seconded by Trustee Reynolds. Okay. All those in favor? Oops, sorry. Cancel. It's okay. No, I didn't. There it is. Yep. All those in favor? Sorry about the technical issue. Don't worry, I canceled that one. So we're just waiting on Trustee Reynolds. Probably just a confirmation there. Thank you, and that passes unanimously. Okay, we have no delegations this evening and no presentations. So we are up to the consent agenda items. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor, and then we can have a discussion if anybody needs to pull anything. So be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items for October 16, 2019, moved by Trustee Shuttleworth, seconded by Trustee Reynolds. Is there any discussion at all, or does anybody want to pull in items? Okay, seeing no one on the speakers list. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Okay, so now we're up to 4.0 ratification action items. Vice Chair Al Harrison, do we have any business from private session that requires approval?
Yes, we do. There are two items. The first one, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolution from private session regarding property matters, report 19118, and I will move that.
Seconded by Trustee Garretts, thank you. Is there any discussion on this at all? Seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you, that carries unanimously. And you have another one?
Yes, indeed. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolution from private session regarding financial matters, report 19120, and I will move that.
Seconded by Trustee Oliver. Is there any discussion at all? Seeing none, All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have one action item for this evening. So I'd like to draw your attention to the recommendation for the Halton District School Board Climate Change Environmental Initiative Practices, Report 19123, submitted by Trustee Amos. I'm assuming you're going to move this? Yeah, okay, but the topic itself you want to move, and then seconded by Vice Chair Al Harrison. Thank you. So what would you like to adjust this to, or would you have one that you could read out in my stead?
So to make this a little more clear than the existing motion that was there, I'm suggesting, and my seconder may have another suggestion, but be it resolved, the Halton District School Board direct the director to create a baseline of board practices and initiatives focused that positively impact climate change and the environment, and bring back a report to the board by the first meeting in February 2020. And is that date something that's acceptable to?
I believe so. Superintendent Pachetti's not here tonight, and a lot of that work will be done by her department because there are business practices. So I'm amenable to saying yes, but if we come back and say, look, can we make it, give us another month, or, okay, then yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so it was be it resolved that the Halton District School Board direct the director to create a baseline of board practices and initiatives that impact climate change and the environment.
Positively impact.
That positively impact climate change and the environment, and bring a report back to the board by the first board meeting, February 2020. Yeah. Okay.
Can I speak to the motion?
Yes,
now?
please do.
So the reason I'm bringing this forward is I believe that this board already has a lot of great practices, that we already are doing some great things to help support our students and our staff and the community with regards to climate change and the environment. But I also believe we need to have a baseline that we can go from of what practices we have. And I believe that our students are already looking at what we might need to go forward with and potentially declare a climate crisis. But I believe if we have a baseline, that will give them some information about what practices we have and where we need to go from there. So that was the intent of this motion. And also, when it comes back, I believe as a board, we need to have a discussion about what we feel needs to happen from there.
Okay, we have a speaker on the speakers list, Trustee Collard.
It'll be no surprise to you that I support this, but I have a question about what a baseline of board practices and initiatives would be. I'm struggling with the concept of a baseline. I'm not sure what that is, and I want to make sure that we all have the common understanding of what it would be.
So it's what our existing practices are, so that we need to find out what our baseline is, where we are right now. That's what I'm declaring as stating as that baseline. If you have another word, I'm quite amenable to changing it, but.
The current state of board practices and initiatives?
I'm not sure if state's the right word, but.
Let me see if I understand, because we'll have to do it. I think it, and I'll use it as an example. We have not recently changed a lot of our cleaning solutions that we use in schools to be organic and less environmentally impactful. I think that we're reporting on that, plus some of our mechanical systems that we're using in the board and our ability to upgrade those so that they're more environmentally friendly. I think this is a big question because are we just, the way I understand it, you want the full range of everything, which includes what we're doing academically as well, eco schools and all those kinds of things, which we're fine doing. It's not, I'm not asking for them being separated, but that's how I understand it. You want the full range of things that we do in our board, whether it's our facilities practices, whether it's decreasing the amount of water bottles, or plastic bottles, I should say, trying to decrease paper, and what we're doing with our students around eco schools, outdoor classrooms, and those kinds of things. That's how I read this. And then we bring that in. Here's where we are right now. Yeah, an inventory of manager.
I like that, an inventory of base of
I was going
board.
to call you Renzella, Manager Renzella.
John would be thrilled.
May I follow up? I'm interested in what we're doing, but I'm also interested in what we should be doing and how we intend to improve. So it's not just a baseline I'm looking for. I want to know what our steps moving forward will be. And so I'm looking for more than what we're doing. I'm looking for what will we do, what do we commit to doing, and how do we plan on rolling that out and how quickly, and all of those wonderful things.
Go ahead, Trustee Amos.
So my intent was, first we need that inventory of where we are before we can go forward to say what we need to go for. And that's what I felt, this is the first step, and then we need to have it come back for a board discussion to hear from the students and Student Senate so that we all have input as to where we need to go from there.
Yes. If we're asking for the report to be in February and then we want to go out and seek input, we're not going to get any traction on this until 2021. I would really like to expand the request in this recommendation to be, and steps to proceed beyond what we're currently doing with metrics to show our commitment to combating climate change. I think we need more than just a report to say what we're doing. We need an action plan, and time's ticking. We can't afford to wait another year before we actually get down to it.
Through you, Chair, to advance to Trustee Collard. I think we can do that. I would say at this point, probably no one around this table, on the outside I'm talking, has the full picture of what's going on environmentally because different superintendents look at different areas. We could go to the academic superintendents to talk about what we're doing in the schools, et cetera, and so on. And with Superintendent Puccetti not here, I know they do a ton of stuff and they're doing a lot of things. So I guess I don't philosophically or ideologically have a disagreement with that. I guess I'm a bit concerned that because this, like how much of the minutia do we want to get into with this and how big does this report become? Because if we're describing all the various cleaning fluids we're using, we're talking about a big report. So I get exactly what you're saying. How about the report asking for an inventory and then ask us to come back later this school year with an action plan on how we can address that? Does that make sense?
Yes, I would be very happy to support that.
Trustee Amos.
So the intent of my motion was more an audit of what our current practices were, and then that can either be used to inform the multi-year plan, our next steps, what other pieces that we need to do. Like, I'm not disagreeing we need to move on it, but that wasn't the intent of the motion. And I agree with you, we probably need to go further, but I actually felt we needed this first before we could take the next steps.
So may we amend the motion then?
We have a few people, so, because I think that we might as well get everybody's input if we're gonna. Frozen, okay. Trustee Daniele.
Thank you very much. I think some really good points have been brought up. I like the idea of creating the inventory and then working on next steps. I recognize it will take longer, but something hurried is often not what we're looking for. We want to make sure that we do this correctly, and we want to make sure that we do it right. And we also need to respect our staff, given that we have labor negotiations going on right now. We're not sure what's going to happen with that. We've got 5 boundary reviews coming up. We've had staffing cuts here, there, and everywhere. I would really, really want to be careful with the pressure that we're putting on our staff. So I think gathering the inventory and then thinking about next steps, if we break this into chunks, it'll be much more manageable, and it will be done more in the way that we're looking for than if we hurry it along.
Trustee Oliver?
Thank you. I guess what I'm hearing is that there's some interest in creating an assessment of how things are right now with a goal for improvement. And you know, this kind of brings to mind the idea that we could put this out as a potential project for a master's level or PhD student who, it's a very hot topic, and I'm sure there are students out there looking for thesis ideas that would help with the workload and get things done. We're looking for some basic key indicators that could be assessed, tracked, with goals derived for each and a plan of action. So there's my 2 cents.
Okay, Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to consider further amendments or substitute motion that builds on everything that people have said. But I also just want to say, through you, Madam Chair, that this conversation came up at the environmental management team meeting last time as well, and that this work has begun, I believe, the inventorying piece. At that time, though, I was advised we were all advised by our community partner and others sitting around the table that largely the climate action initiative at this point in time, at this moment in history, has come through youth voice, and that it would be important for us as a board, rather than leap forward, to take the time, as Trustee Daniele said, to really engage with student voice for those next steps. So I agree and support the inventorying baseline. I think that it will provide valuable information, but I also would like, if Student Senate is interested, that on a parallel track, they're creating something to advise the board on what they think, whether it be declaration of climate emergency or whatever that piece may be. So please tell me what you want me to do with this.
Okay, so I'm sort of seeing that this is morphed into 2 motions. One is to kind of undertake the inventory, and one is next steps. So are both of these motions appropriate for this moment in time, or do we focus on the one motion and then work perhaps with Student Senate on the second part? Would you like to say something?
Through you, Chair Grevens, being mindful of Vice Chair Al Harrison's comments about the youth, I think the first motion is clearly about taking an inventory of what we're currently doing. But I think it's appropriate to say that the second motion will we will come back with an action plan, and part of that will be consulting. We won't, as we develop our action plan, we'll go out to the students and the youth. We won't actually say what the action plan is. We'll just say the second motion and begin an action plan consultation process or something along those lines. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. So should the motion then include that you're going to bring back a report that includes a recommendation for a plan, or with a plan, or?
No, it wouldn't come with, sorry, it would not come with a plan. We would, that's the next step, to develop a plan, and we would do it in consultation with kids and the board.
It would come back to us to make a motion then to move to those next steps. Whatever they would be coming from the information that we receive from your plan, from your inventory.
I'm not sure that the board will ultimately approve whatever comes out of the action plan. There's probably parts of it that they will, but other parts of it will be just operational, purchasing, procurement, all that other stuff. So, I mean, we'll have to kind of figure out which parts the trustees would approve and which parts they would not approve in that process, I think. But I'm totally fine with us saying that, well, you know, directing us to create an action plan in consultation with students, student trustees, if that makes it better. And we can sit down with that.
Trustee Burns?
Through you, Madam Chair, I very much do appreciate, on behalf of Trustee Lau as well, the support for student voice that has been echoed around this board table as in the past few minutes. If I may also address the second motion that was being spoken about earlier, Trustee Lau and I have been speaking recently about the possibility of asking our student senators what they would think would be appropriate to include in an environmental action plan in the future. This is something that will be spoken about in the student trustee report for this meeting as well. We would very much appreciate the opportunity and enjoy the opportunity to work with the board in any motion in the future, working towards looking for these next steps in conjunction with student voice, because it's very clear at this point that the board does value that opinion from students, and we would like to thank all of you for that input.
Trustee Collard?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to be clear that I wasn't saying that we shouldn't be consulting. Absolutely, we should be consulting. I just don't want us to wait until February to start consulting. And so if people would like to approach Student Senate, or, you know, if there's some consultation plan that could be put together before this report comes out, that would be great, because I don't want us to get this report in February and then start consulting, because it would take us until the next fall to complete any consultation, and that's a year from now. We only have 10 years to get this right, and I'm not trying to rush us. I'm trying to get us moving forward a little bit more quickly.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. And I think I see the wisdom in what Trustee Collard is saying, because one of the things that has bothered me about climate action is like hashtag what next? What are the actions behind or that go along with to make an impact in a sustainable way? So it sounds like we're on to something, and I just wanted to redirect to Trustee Amos around the motions. What are your thoughts?
So I believe we have the first part, which I hear a lot of support for, but I agree that we need to look at the next steps, and Vice Chair Al Harrison has made a suggestion. Would you like to read it, or do you want me to read it? Me? Be it resolved that this, as a second part of the motion, be it resolved that this baseline subsequently be utilized to collaboratively create with students a comprehensive climate action plan. Pardon? With students, well, I think student, staff, and trustees should be part of it, but I think the intent here was to make sure we are honoring student voice because we believe that some of the groundswell needs to come from them.
Through you, Chair Drabantz, I think what I'd be looking for, and I don't even know if we really need a motion on that part because we can do it anyway, and we would do it anyway. I'm thinking, I just said to Chair Drabantz that we could very quickly get started on a process where Associate Director Bogue and I meet with Trustee Lau and Trustee Burns to just kind of map out some kind of framework or skeletal process that we could bring. I'm looking at you two, if that's fine, and Associate Director Bogue around how we could do that. So I don't think the wording of the second one is that significant in terms of, we will consult with student trustees to bring this in there, and then, because there's a lot of stakeholders, the environmental management team, the Senate, et cetera. What we want to be careful about, though, is survey creep. We're surveying our staff and students lots and lots. So anyway, we won't get into the details of that, but I mean, we could just simply start with that process, and we could do that pretty quickly. I think. I'm looking at you two. Yeah.
Okay, so so the first motion, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board direct the Director of Education to create an inventory / baseline of board practices and initiatives that positively impact climate change and the environment, and bring a report back to the board by the first board meeting in February 2020. Is that still okay as a first motion? Yes, I'm seeing not. So we will deal with that motion first. So does anybody have any more to say about that motion before we vote on it? Okay, we shall vote on it now. All those in favor? Okay, and that carries unanimously. Okay, so the second part, this is what we've kind of been wordsmithing around. Be it resolved that this report instigate a consultative process in conjunction with student trustees and other stakeholders in the creation of an action plan to further climate change and environment initiatives within the board. Trustee Collard.
I would like to be more specific than this report, because when the first one's done and then the second one's sitting on the order paper, no one's going to know what this report means. So can we just say the inventory / baseline report? Environmental inventory / baseline report to be really specific.
Okay, so be it resolved that the environmental / baseline report instigate, et cetera, et cetera?
Environmental inventory / baseline report.
Okay. I can't spell. Okay. We'll correct the spelling after. Be resolved that the environmental inventory / baseline report instigate? Initiate? No. The report doesn't initiate it, though. Be it resolved that the environmental inventory baseline report be utilized to inform a consultative process in conjunction with student trustees and stakeholders in the creation of an action plan to further climate change and environmental initiatives within the board. Are we happy with that? Just I'm seeing nods. Yes. Okay. Be it resolved that the environmental inventory / baseline report be utilized to inform a consultative process in conjunction with student trustees and stakeholders in the creation of an action plan to further climate change and environmental initiatives within the board. Yes, 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 yes.
Can I just step in for 1 second?
Of course you can.
Through you, Chair Drevens, the part about consultative process in conjunction with student trustees and stakeholders, I'm concerned that that's overly complicating it because we're not developing the plan, we're just developing the process. And I don't want to, I think I'm going to have to invite all these people in, all the stakeholders. We'd have to have staff and community and all these. I think our initial step is we sit down with student trustees and map that out, as opposed to directing us to do it right away, because I can see this now becomes a big meeting, and the next one, because our schedules and our agendas will be a month after the first one and then another month after that. I think I'm cognizant of what Trustee Collard said, is there is somewhat of an urgency to this, and so I'm a bit concerned with the stakeholder things, because now we have to define who the stakeholders are. We got to get them all at the table, and I think it in my opinion, and we'll do as the board wishes, but in my opinion, it complicates that process of doing the action plan. After that's developed, then I think that's when we go to all those groups.
Trustee Daniele?
Thank you, because that's what I'm struggling with as well. I'm struggling with the timing. Because if we're setting up a consultation now to have in place when we receive the report in February, then it doesn't matter if we get the report. We're already precluding what we think the report is going to be. I think the report should trigger the next step. I think if we're trying to do 2 or 3 steps at the same time, we're not going to do them well. We're going to get bogged down in the weeds exactly as you're speaking right now. We can have some cursory conversations about when we receive this information, what we would like to do with it. But I think everything really has to come back to when we get the report and what's in the report. Because at this point, we don't know what's in the report. We don't know what's going to come out of it. We don't know what our actions are going to be after that. We can't pre-think what we think is going to be in that report, because that's when we're going to get ourselves into trouble, and then we're going to have to backtrack, and that's going to take even longer. So I would be comfortable if it said that the report would trigger a consultative process, is where I'm thinking. But I think that really the main action right now, given the timing, given that it is nearly November, and with labor relations, and with Christmas, and with everything else, getting that report done and getting it done well. I think Kelly's original motion should really be the priority, and then the next priority should focus just as heavily on what happens next.
Trustee Amos?
I agree a lot of what Trustee Daniele said, but my thought was to go back to that piece of the motion and say have the report come back, and I am assuming, and maybe wrongly or rightly, that Student Senate will be already looking at all this or looking at what they're doing around climate change, but that that report needs to go to them, and it needs to come back to Committee of the Whole so that trustees as a whole can have a discussion. So while I do believe it needs to come back to the board, at that point we need to, I think, be referred to Committee of the Whole for us to have a discussion about next steps.
Do we want to actually cut off right now? We've passed the one motion. When it comes back, we can then decide what the heck we're going to do with it. I'm seeing big nods around the table.
And in the meantime, we can still.
Yeah, there will be stuff going on. So I know I'm seeing nods around the table. I'm seeing a minority shaking their head. So I think go, Kate, Trustee Caller.
The motion that was read said we were going to base the consultation on the report. So it's exactly what Trustee Daniele asked for. And all that Director Miller wanted removed was the stakeholder piece because he wants to do his work with the student trustees on that. So it is completely aligned with what Trustee Daniele objected to. And I see no reason to bring back a motion at a later date when we can do it now by just removing the word and stakeholder. If you read the motion again without the words and stakeholder, I think people may understand that this is not happening until the baseline report is done. We're not getting the cart before the horse.
Okay, so so the motion's on the table right now. So you're looking, oh, it's not, I haven't read. Oh, it hasn't been actually moved yet. Do we have a mover and do we have a seconder? We've already passed the first part, so this is entertaining bringing to the floor the second motion. So we have a mover.
Can you please read it so people can hear it?
Yes. I will take out the and stakeholders part as requested as I read this. Okay, be it resolved that the environment inventory baseline, be it resolved that the environment inventory / baseline report be utilized to trigger / inform a consultative process in conjunction with student trustees in the creation of an action plan to further climate change and environmental initiatives within the board. So we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Okay, we have Vice Chair Al Harrison seconder as a seconder. And Trustee Daniele, you're up.
Thank you. I'm going to struggle with supporting this because I don't understand the urgency of doing it now or doing it in February when it arrives. It's got the same impact as if we receive it that night and we make the motion. It's got the exact same impact, and we're not presuming what's going to happen in February because we don't know what's going to happen between now and then. And given that it's going to be pretty much the exact same motion coming to us in February when we receive the information, I'm much more comfortable doing it in February. So I'm afraid that I will not be supporting it tonight.
Okay, Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I'm of similar mind that I'm concerned that we're restricting ourselves because we haven't actually seen the report yet, and I would prefer that we decide our actions from the report at that time.
Director Miller.
Chair DeVent, thank you, Chair DeVent, to Trustee Amos, Trustee Daniele. Appreciate what you're saying. It would not be, and maybe there's some wordsmithing. It would not be our intention to work with the student trustees to develop the action plan. It's basically, there's going to be some action plan that comes out of this, whatever that may be. It may be minimal, it might be huge, it might be small. I don't know what it is until we see the inventory. It will be our intention to sit down with the student trustees and develop a kind of framework for an action plan to come in. And we could not deliver an action plan in February anyway, because I absolutely agree with the trustees who say we don't even know exactly where we are yet. Okay, fair enough. So that's what I'm saying. So maybe it's a wordsmithing. I think it's valuable for Associate Director Bogue and myself, and maybe a few of the other superintendents around the table, to sit down with the student trustees to say, look, how do we think this plays out, and what's the best way for us to go forward, and kind of leave it at that. I agree. We can, yeah. Which I said a few minutes ago. We'll meet anyway. So.
Okay, so there's no more speakers on the speakers list. We will, I'm going to call the question. Okay, thank you. All those in favor? So that carries, but not unanimously. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. So a report will be returning to the table. First meeting in February, and an action, and the second motion will be put into. We did. Okay, so we are up to communications to the board. First off is student trustee reports. Trustee Lau and Trustee Burns, the floor is yours.
As we approach the second Student Senate meeting, Trustee Lau and I are preparing to carefully select our Executive Council for the upcoming year before October 29th. Trustee Lau and I are very excited to continue reviewing the well-written applications from our many talented student senators. During the second Student Senate meeting, Trustee Lau and I are also planning on beginning another committee related to the student trustee election policy in the school board, led by our regional representatives and comprised by some elect student senators. This committee will aim to develop a fair, representative election system for the election of future student trustees that will be brought up later this year. There has also been a large increase in the number of student senators in the Senate itself, as there are now 64 schools with student representation in this school board.
Thank you, Trustee Burns. In addition to our Student Senate meeting, which is coming up in 2 weeks, Trustee Burns and I are looking forward to our annual Osta Eco Fall General Meeting at the Marriott in Toronto, which begins tomorrow and continues until this Sunday. We are extremely grateful for this opportunity to network, and we hope to learn how to become better student trustees inside and outside of the boardroom, as well as speak with student trustees who are doing great initiatives at other boards. Overall, we hope to bring some insightful ideas and invaluable skills back to the HDSB. On another note, Trustee Burns and I have continued to keep our Student Senate updated through posts called Student Senator Opportunities, where we inform students about initiatives that they can partake in. For example, I was contacted by a representative who informed me that Mark Kielberger, the founder of the We organizations and We Day, will be speaking in Oakville on October 26th, and it's open to all Halton students. Other youth opportunities include mental health initiatives, the Green UN Youth Conference, and we will be posting one later tonight about the HDSB committees that have contacted us who would like student representation. Our Instagram pages have also been a huge success, and although there hasn't been a precedent of student trustee Instagram pages, we've found that many students from all over Halton are more comfortable with contacting us through that way, as opposed to email or other forms of communication. And so we found that there are actually numerous that are already interested in the next student trustee election for next term. So we're very glad to see that there is a lot of interest in student voice this year. Thank you.
That's great. It's always good to hear a student voice on the rise. So. Okay, so thank you very much. It's wonderful. Okay, so next we are up to action items for November the 6th. Can't believe we're already heading into November. Sometimes we have items that meet established criteria to come to the board table twice before we vote on it, and we have one item that falls under that criteria tonight, and that is trustee honoraria, December 1st, 2019, report 19121. Superintendent Ngoy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, through Chair Grabetz, to all trustees. The report outlines the trustee honoraria for the 12 months beginning December 1st, 2019. It is calculated based on the Ontario Regulation 35706, and it is based on a enrollment amount for the budget estimates for the prior year, so 2018-19, as well as a base amount set out by the regulation and the allowable attendance amount. This follows the policy, the governance policy on trustee honoraria, and the amounts are listed for the upcoming year for trustees' information, and Appendix A provides a detailed breakdown of those amounts and the various components, and I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
There is no one on the speakers list. Maybe some questions will come next time. So thank you very much. Okay, so we have no information items for this evening. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we're up to the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Grabetz. I only have one item for the report tonight, and I won't be speaking to it. We're just going to essentially turn it over to trustees if they have questions. As you know, there has been changes in terms of funding for PIC and pro-grants, and Superintendent Pennyfather sent us not a report, but a document around to all trustees to see. And so if it's open for any questions, and Superintendent Pennyfather's able to answer.
Okay, Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. Through the chair, just wondering when this would be shared out with the schools, communities, and what is the expectation that more information will be coming in terms of application process?
Through the chair to Trustee Reynolds, we wanted to send communication next week that a new process is coming. We're meeting this Friday with the folks from communication and IT and some admin folks from upstairs to start to develop the. I referred in the summary to a way to make an application that also serves as their final report, so it's not an arduous process, and that we could do as kind of a Google Doc format. So we're working on that on Friday. I wanted to get through the PIC conference before we started sending other stuff out, so that we weren't confusing people. And we'll let them know that a process is coming, and I hope to have it figured out in a couple of weeks. I want to meet also with everybody's very busy, and again, I didn't send out a meeting request before the PIC conference because everybody's up to here arranging their part of the conference. But early next week, set up a meeting just with the PIC planning team to tighten up what we think should be the process.
Yeah, there's no one else on the speakers list, so I wanted to say some things. I really appreciate the work that's gone into this. I know that it's been, this was announced very recently, and already we've got a plan in place. Thank you very much to you, Superintendent Pennyfather, and your staff. With regards to the program itself, I want to say that I am very frustrated with the government in how that they've downloaded this to the boards and cut funding. These are very valuable programs for our parents, to engage our parents, and it's I think unconscionable that they just get swiped in half, and the work gets downloaded to overburdened boards and to volunteers, because volunteers and staff have to go through all of the applications now and assess them and approve them and hunt down reports to feed back to the ministry. This is not a small job to do. There's $37,000 worth of projects.
That's 36,800 around there. Yep.
And so that's close to probably 70 potentially different projects that will have to be hunted down and reports made on and all those things, because we're assuming about $500 per project.
That's the tentative plan.
That's the tentative plan at this point. That's a lot of work.
And that's why we're trying to do as much as we can electronically, so that.
And I appreciate that. And if you need some help, I'm willing to help. But again, this should not be downloaded to the boards to do. This should not be downloaded to overworked staff. This should not be downloaded to volunteers and trustees who, if people are reading our honorary report, we are also volunteers. It's, I don't know what else to say about it. As you can see, I'm frustrated. I'm probably turning red. But anyways, there is a speakers list now. So Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. I just want to echo and share your frustration, partly because A, the amount of funds is greatly reduced, B, $500 to any school council does not represent a great deal of money to support some of the parent engagement projects that I have seen over the years in our schools in Halton. And so there's no more critical component, I think, than parent engagement in education. This is something that the government should be standing fully behind and endorsing. And sadly, it doesn't seem to be the case in this current year of funding from our government. I'm hopeful that enough voices being brought forward might change things in the future. But for this year, I would encourage schools to work together and combine their monies together to create these wonderful events that they have always created for the parents and other members of our communities. So I think I feel like we're cobbled moving forward, but we need to do so. But we also need to bring voice in whatever form that may take to the government to let them know of the impact of this decision and this reduction in funding.
Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I believe we still have motion M19-0131 on the books, which was our motion to write a letter to the minister expressing the valuable contribution that school councils and PRO grants make, ... etc. So it seems as if we could rescind that one because it's no longer needed. The ministry has provided information at this point in time, but we may want to replace it with a subsequent one, a letter, if we want, expressing what Trustee Gray just noted. So do I have to make a notice of motion then to rescind that when we get to notices of motion? Okay. Okay, could I make a motion to rescind motion M19-0131?
Seconded by Trustee Rocha. Is Trustee Reynolds, I'm going to take you off this list right now, and then you can come back on later. Is there any discussion? Trustee Gray.
Instead of rescinding this motion to write a letter to the government on behalf of the pro-grant and its importance to communities, why wouldn't we just revise maybe the content of that letter, because I think a letter is appropriate. I think just revising the content, maybe acknowledging and appreciating maybe the funds that have been received, but then perhaps working into the letter our concern in moving forward in the fact that the funding will not allow us to plan the effective parent engagement projects that have always gone on in the past. So I just like the idea that we keep the letter, we just revise our messaging in that letter.
So what you want to, you'd like to instead amend something previously adopted?
If that's possible.
It's possible. It's possible. It's very possible. I love breaking new ground here. So do we have? Okay. Okay. Trustee Gray, would you like to take a moment to perhaps craft something? Because I sure appreciate other people crafting things instead of me. Okay. That would be great. Why don't we take like a 5-minute recess? Oh, you've got it. Okay, I do. I was in that. None of us bobble. Okay, so the first item is that we'll have we have a motion to amend something previously adopted, and that's motion M19-0131, and I believe that's moved by Trustee Gray. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Shuttleworth. Excellent. Is there any discussion on that? Actually, I don't. Yeah, does anybody? Nobody has anything to say about that. Okay, is that in here yet? Manager Gertmaker? Okay, I'm just waiting for the flash. There we go. All those in favor of amending something previously adopted? And that carries unanimously. And now you have a new motion.
Yes, we've just changed a few words in the passage that is currently before us. I can give you those few words that have been changed.
Read the whole thing.
So I'll read the whole thing. Be it resolved that the chair write a letter to the Minister of Education expressing the valuable contribution that school councils and pro-grants play in engaging the community in support of student achievement and well-being, encouraging the continuation of the funding model as per previous years, and requesting that information be made available as soon as possible so school councils can submit meaningful and timely proposals. I think that last part needs to be out.
Yeah.
So just
as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Take that off. So.
Can you read that again, please?
So I was good up until and requesting that information be made as available as soon as possible, period.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure we need that.
Hold on.
Yeah, could you just read it one more time?
Okay, I'm going to read the whole thing again here just so that we have clarity. Be it resolved that the chair write a letter to the Minister of Education expressing the valuable contribution that school councils and pro-grants play in engaging the community in support of student achievement and well-being, encouraging the continuation of the funding model as per previous years, and requesting that information be made available as soon as possible.
Okay, that sounds pretty good to me. So that's moved by you, And then we need a seconder for this one? Yes. Okay. Trustee Collard, the seconder on that. And is there any discussion at all? Trustee Reynolds, are you, okay, go ahead.
So I fully support the idea of the letter to express our concern, our support for the programs, but I think we need to beef it up because what I'm hearing from what we're doing going forward is we're dealing with half the funds, but I haven't yet heard how that's going to impact our PIC conference. So I would want to be I would hope that our letter is as specific as possible as what we can quickly identify as some very meaningful activities that are going to be impacted from this loss of funds. I think I'm absolutely positive our schools are going to know it right off because $500 potentially is a lot different than $1,000 when you're dealing with a school-wide event. So I think I would like to ask that perhaps we consider as much as we could put in there for our board.
Trustee Gray?
I'd like to respond. I think that is an easy ask and would be certainly the intent. I think we need to relay to the government the impact of such a financial reduction to this grant to schools. So that would be easy to include. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so we are now going to vote on the amended motion. So this is going to substitute back into that spot. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. There will be a letter written regarding this. Thank you very much. Are there any, Trustee Reynolds, you had something else to ask earlier?
No, I think I'm good because I think the point I was going to make was regarding whether we had any idea right now, outside of funds, what impacts this decrease is going to affect our programs and our PIC conference, which is coming up on Saturday.
Through the chair to Trustee Reynolds, it won't affect our upcoming PIC conference because the way it's gone over the last number of years is that was funded through last year's PRO grants, and it was a separate grant that we were able to apply for that specific event. Other than that, I want to talk to the PIC planning team before I say this would impact or that would impact because I want to discuss how they want to go forward with it. I would say that we have, although there's a money loss here, the idea of the PIC committee is that they are a liaison with the board and they also give feedback to the board, and that's full steam ahead. We have our November meeting planned, and that's going to be a no-cost meeting, but it's going to be excellent because Superintendent Potter-Barrick is going to be discussing the whole Safe Schools plan and taking feedback from the PIC reps, which is the purpose of it. And our equity department is planning to do one of the meetings in the new year with a similar presentation and take feedback. So we're still going to be able to do rich activities, but in terms of how the conference and that kind of thing works, so I want to talk to the PIC reps.
Okay, thank you very much. So you have nothing else for your director's report?
No, I'm finished, thank you.
Okay, so up to communications from the chair. I just want to point out that there is a letter that we received from Simcoe County District School Board. We were CC'd on it. It was to the Minister of Education requesting the release of new pupil accommodation review guidelines. We haven't had that those guidelines released to us, and they were suspended back in 2017, I believe. So it must be putting pressure on that board. Okay, so up to trustee questions and, committee reports. sorry, skip that. And just a note that for the people at home, who are the many people at home that are watching right now, that we have added a link to committee reports on the actual agenda so that for our agenda packages and meeting minutes for our committee of the whole. So now it's easily accessible for people. Okay, are there any other committee reports? Trustee Oliver.
Okay, so the Special Education Advisory Committee met last night. We had a presentation by Superintendent Podroberic on the Code of Conduct, and then the group engaged in group discussions around the elements of the code that help to support a positive school environment, and what some of the recommendations would be for every school to pursue in order to build and support a positive culture in each school. We also had a presentation by Superintendent Zonneveld on processes and supports for highly able, potentially gifted primary students. And that was as a result of phase 3 of the special education review that took place a while back. There were some interesting conversations and discussions resulting from that. And the group looked at the list of priorities. We have a number of topics of interest identified for SEAC to discuss in the course of the next several months, and in fact through at the end of the term. So the group will be asked to prioritize those so that we can both bring the educational pieces from staff and engage in some really good discussions to provide advice to the board. And finally, we did receive notice from Christina Huddy, who's the alternate representative for Autism Ontario, that she's stepping down. So we did express our gratitude to Christina for her dedication and service on SEAC. Thank you.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. This Saturday, October the 19th, is the, I think it's the 11th annual Parent Involvement Committee Conference, and it's a sold-out event. We have cut off registration, so hopefully you all got your names in and let us know that you were going to be there. And just so you're aware, Trustee Gray and I are giving a presentation on the role of the trustee and for our upcoming challenges and opportunities. So we'd welcome any other trustee who wants to come and be part of it. Please come on in. Yeah, we're in the morning session. So, and it also has 2 great keynote speakers. So Nora Young and our wonderful superintendent, Jackie Newton. So please come on down.
Okay, great. And on top of that, the multi-year plan steering committee met yesterday. Yes. And with the consulting companies helping us reach out to our stakeholders, and at the parent conference, there will be they will have staff there that will be talking to people to get their input on how they feel about our mission, vision, values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that people please engage with these consultants because your opinion is very valuable in what we want to achieve here at the Halton District School Board. So there are no more questions or comments. Sorry. That was still committee reports. So questions and comments. Okay, Trustee Shuttleworth, just keeping you on your toes.
Thank you, through the chair. I guess to Superintendent Miller. No, Director Miller. My goodness, that was, sorry. Okay, so I have had, are you? Okay. So I have had some questions from the community, and I'm actually curious myself. As we're now in the first year where standardized testing will be impacted by the change in Halton's French immersion programming, students in grade 3 writing EQAO will have had the majority of their instruction in French. What my question is will they be writing EQAO in French or in English at the grade 3 level?
Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Shuttleworth, I'm referring to Superintendent Salmini, or Director Salmini, whatever you prefer.
Through the chair to Trustee Shuttleworth, thank you for the question. It is one that we've been giving a great deal of thought to with our staff, both in the schools and as a program department. We did look to what other boards with a high intensity in primary of French immersion instruction are doing, and our decision is that they will be writing the math portion of the assessment in French, because their last 2 years of instruction and preparation for the assessment will be in French, and they will write the language portion of the assessment in English, as this year they've returned to a 20% level of instruction in English.
Can I have a follow-up? How will that be communicated to the community?
So in terms of communication, we've communicated with our staff because they've had questions as well, and we're planning on professional learning for the teachers involved in this first time in administering the assessment this way, and we're also going to provide principals with communication that they can share out to their school communities.
Thank you.
Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to the director, a recent tragic and violent event at a school in Hamilton has resulted in attention being given to the response that school staff and administrators have around reports of bullying and harassment. When an event such as this happens, do we as a school board take the time to reflect and then review the practices within our schools to ensure that the responses by school staff and administrators to all forms of bullying and harassment are both adequate and effective?
Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Gray and all trustees, thank you for the question. I will refer to Superintendent Podrebaric around some of the specifics, but first I would like to say, when this incident occurred, it's your thoughts immediately go to the family and friends of the young man, and then next to the community and the school staff and the broader staff of the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. It's an awful situation, and it gives us all pause to reflect on many things, one of which is, are we doing enough here to protect our students? Sadly, there's lots of incidents in the province and in the country that cause us to sit back and take stock of what we're doing to see if what we're doing is adequate, effective, appropriate, and so on. And in this particular incident, we have done the same. We're confident, and we're confident that we are dealing with this appropriately, but it does take your breath away and cause you to think about what we need to do as a board. I'll refer to Superintendent Podrebaric for specifics around what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Further to Director Miller's comments, annually we're always reviewing, and we approach this through prevention and intervention supports for schools. So an example would be annual training every year on our bullying admin procedure for all of our administrators. That's actually ongoing now. And as I said, it's annual, and we do go through it. There's lots of strong legislative pieces in place around bullying. I think it comes down to how it's implemented, the fidelity at the school level, and so that's where we come in with our training and supports. If there are problems, we have a Safe Schools team of 3 social workers and 3 CYCs this year that a principal just has to call through Jonathan Shaws, who specifically can come in and flood a school with support if needed around really specific events. We have violent threat risk assessment trainings and rapid risk assessment trainings, again, if a school is in a dicey situation like that needs more assessment or looking at to treat these before they get really serious. So we've probably done about 30 of each of those last year. So, I mean, events happen, it's how well we get in and treat them. CPS, RP, all of these trainings they're all prevention efforts, right, to get to kids who are troubled sooner and give them skills and also provide some intervention to stop before things spiral out of control. So we do lots of those things. Our resource officers are in every high school through Halton Region Police Services. They do lots of great work as well in terms of supporting our admin, to support kids. So it's quite a comprehensive list of interventions and prevention efforts. Our bullying AP is very strong, and in our code of conduct, which we've been recently updating and sharing, also speaks very specifically around those types of behaviors. And so through all of that, we hope to minimize impact the best we can, but recognizing it's still a human endeavor, and there are no guarantees, but we won't stand by our efforts to do everything we can to minimize these, and so far we've been fairly successful in that.
May I just add, Superintendent Podravaric, you gave a couple of acronyms there, like CPS. Could you just, for the trustees' benefit?
I used a lot of acronyms. My apologies. So VITRA is Violent Threat Risk Assessment Training. We call another one called RAT, which is probably the worst acronym in education, which is Rapid Risk Assessment Tool. CPS is Collaborative Problem Solving, and RP is Restorative Practices Training. So they all work together, really. They're all a little different, but the end game is supporting kids who are in risk or at risk for troublesome behaviors.
And I would make a final comment around it. This is a societal issue beyond the schools, and we need, and it's appropriate that we got picked this coming weekend, we need parents to work with us and provide us information. And sometimes these situations occur in schools. And if you think about a secondary school with, with 2,000 students in there, many things can go on, and some people are aware of it, and they never reach out to an adult in the building. They never let a staff member know. And that includes other adults in the community, sometimes parents, and sometimes other students. So, we don't know how to make that happen, to make people come and let us know. I have complete confidence that when it is brought to our school staffs, that we deal with it. Sometimes it's not as effective as we would like it to be, but there's quite a menu of options for school staff to deal with through Superintendent Podravaric department. But if there is public out there, I urge them to work with us, and if they have information that helps these situations, it's also incumbent upon them to let us know. Because like I said, these big schools, stuff goes on in washrooms. Nobody's the wiser from a staff member's perspective. But there's kids that have seen it. Their kids are aware, and some of those kids tell their parents, and their parents don't phone us or anything. And so I think that's, if that's one area that we really need help in, or if that's one area we need help in, it's a societal issue, and we all have to accept responsibility for making our schools safe, not just the staffs in the schools.
Okay, so we're at the end of trustee questions and comments. We do need to go. Okay, so we have exhausted our agenda, and I declare this meeting to be adjourned.